All right, hey, so we're gonna look real quick at leveling up and progressing, regressing, trying to maximize how we implement rowing variations. So especially if you're a coach and you're working with individuals who maybe are new to the weight room or they're more advanced, right? Because a lot of times when we sit there and we look at, do we need to change the exercises we select all the time? No, right? Because we can always regress them, we can always progress them, and we can always take them up a little bit, we can always take them back a little bit. So we're gonna use a dumbbell row here for example, right? And just kind of one of those ways that if we're really looking at how we layer things, right, and progress things over time, we start with a very basic movement, right? So dumbbell row, most people know, right? Knee on a bench, being able to just move that shoulder, pulling up, coming back down, right? Now right there is a very simply executed movement. Now what we have is we have some external support so we can really isolate the shoulder blade and be able to associate just kind of how we have some moving through some dumbbell movements. Now, if we want to level that up, right? So when we look at layering some of these things, we isolate a movement right there. If we want to make this harder, we can limit the amount of support we have and then start to work it into some of our more integrated systems. So I could do, I like to call it a sumo dumbbell row. Some people still just call it a dumbbell row, but being able to get in a position where I still have a little bit of support on a bench, all right? But now all of a sudden I'm rowing from here, all right? So now all of a sudden I have a little bit more limited support for my body and for balance, right? Then we can level it up even more, right? Being able to stay in a hinge, and you can do this as one arm, you can do this as two arm, pulling up and creating a little bit more demand, right? So less external support levels it up, right? Then how do we take it even past that? And that's where I think a lot of people really have a hard time with leveling these things. They try to come up with all these fancy exercises, but we always layer our skills, right? Our goal isn't necessarily to make every lift as heavy as possible. It's how do we move lighter loads with better execution, right? So that's where we start to get back into attention to detail. So we can take away the external support, then we can start to work into some of those things where I can take my dumbbell row back and then I can start to focus on my breathing, right? So then all of a sudden I sit there, breathe in at the bottom, pull, back and down, right? And isolate how I'm moving through that shoulder blade, right? So then I get that intentional reach, right? I'm breathing, coming all the way up. Same thing happens then if I were to take it off out into that sumo row, being able to focus on that breathing, focus on some of the rotation, right? Attention to detail, breathing in, pulling, coming back down, all right? All these different things we can sit there and layer on are just skills within the same movement, right? I'm not changing the movement, I'm changing what's my external support, I'm changing the attention to detail that I do it. I can change rep ranges, stuff like that, tempos. That's all how we can layer it up. Like I said, we're not trying to change the movement or the exercise, we're trying to level it up, right? We can regress it, give more support, or even take away some of the focused breathing aspect. We can level it up even more by adding or taking away support, adding more components such as breathing, attention to detail, how much flexion, extension of the thoracic spine we're getting, how much rotation we're getting through the thoracic spine, humeral head positions, right? Or if we're looking at rotation of the humerus, being able to sit there and look at what's going on at the shoulder and at the arm. So when we're looking at things, right, and this goes for a whole lot of different movements, starting from a very low spot of basic and simple with more support, working up to less support, then possibly even coming back down. You can kind of toy around with those layers a little bit, but being able to understand that as we progress movements or regress movements, that we have these different layers. We have support, we have attention to detail, and we have like our basic movements, and we can toy around with those different components to make movements harder or easier depending on who you're working with and just what your goal for training is for the day.